Even though the class is focusing on Genesis, Exodus, and Deuteronomy, in that part of the Old Testament we call the Torah or the Pentateuch, I do want to continue to move us from Sinai to Horeb, to the edge of the Promised Land. So just a few things to note about the book of Numbers, because it is in the book of Numbers where the people begin their march from Sinai towards Canaan. Now Numbers 1:1 through 10:10 recounts an arrangement of the camp of the Israelites for Yahweh war, for coming into Canaan and fighting for the land. It begins with a military census in chapter 1, and in chapter 2, it sets out the setup of the camp as a military camp, set up for a military campaign with a tabernacle in the middle, surrounded by Levites, who are then surrounded by the people, by their companies, by his own standard. In other words, arranged by tribe. Here is a depiction of the arrangement of the tribes. You have Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun to the east, Reuben, Simeon, and Gad to the south, Benjamin, Manasseh, and Ephraim to the west, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali to the north. In the center, there is a very small camp for Moses, Aaron, and Aaron's sons. To the section of the Levites called Kohath, one for Gershon and one for Merari, and then in the very middle is the tabernacle. I found this interesting diagram from the web, which shows the arrangement of the camp by tribe and who the mother was for each of these tribes. And notice, for example, that all of the tribes associated with Rachel are to the west, Ephraim and Manasseh being half tribes descended from Joseph, plus Benjamin, and that 3 of the tribes of Leah are toward the east, and then towards the north and south, they're divided between Leah, Zilpah, and Bilhah. So we can see that they are somewhat arranged by who the mother was. Levi was also one of Leah's sons, but that tribe is in the center. The division of the Levites in Numbers 4 is done according to their function in carrying the tabernacle in this military formation. So the Kohathites carried the most holy utensils and symbols of the sanctuary. The Gershonites carried the curtains, coverings, screens, hangings, cords, and instruments of the tabernacle and the tent of meeting on the journeys in the wilderness. And the Merarites carried the framework of the sanctuary. The rest of Numbers is organized as an itinerary, a march, a battle campaign towards Canaan. And many of the events along the way can be seen in a military context. Things like insubordination, rebellion, and the enforcement of military discipline. Other military features are the use of spies, a taking of the census in chapter 26, and war with the Midianites. In chapter 33:1, we have the statement, "These are the stages by which the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt in military formation under the leadership of Moses and Aaron." Rebellion and insubordination take place along the way. In 11:3, the people resist the toughness of the journey. The parallel passage in chapter 21 has some complaining about water and food. In chapter 11, they wish they had more. In chapter 20, they complain about water. In 12, Miriam and Aaron complain about Moses. In 16 and 17, the Levites complain about Moses and Aaron. And at the center of this, in 13 and 14, the people refuse to believe that they can overcome with Yahweh's help. And remember, this is happening in the context of a military campaign. The complaints are similar to those we find in Exodus 15 and 18, but the penalties are much harsher. In Exodus, we have a lack of water, and God gives them water. Lack of food, God gives them manna and quail. And again, lack of water, and Moses strikes the rock, and there is water in Massa and Meribah. In Numbers 11, there is a lack of meat, but at the complaints, God sends fire and plague. In Numbers 14, there is a fear of the residents of Canaan. And the generation of those who complained and refused to go forward are told they will not enter the land. In Numbers 20, there is a lack of water. And here Moses, in his frustration, strikes the rock twice, and as a consequence, will not enter the land. So what's the difference? Why is God rather tolerant in Exodus, but not so much in Numbers? The difference is the fact that in Exodus they are escaping slaves. They have not entered into a particular relationship with God. They have made no promises. They are simply escaping from slavery. When they set out from Numbers, they are a different people. They are now a covenant people, and they have pledged loyalty to Yahweh. And yet they continue to rebel and to complain. This rebellion and complaining then puts at risk their gaining of the land.